You made me cry already.
That's a good start.
Yeah, it's a great start. I developed an encyclopedia of knowledge where if I needed anything, I just needed to look up into my bookcases and any answer can be found in a book. When I talk to these buyers agents, they're just trying to snap up a property with no basis for their client. No entrepreneurial skills.
Welcome back to another episode of That Backyard Property Pod. Wow, today is a special day. I have my mentor, the person I look up to the most, my mum. Welcome, Mum.
Thank you, Michael. You made me cry already.
That's a good start.
Yeah, it's a great start.
So, it wasn't part of the initial thought to get you on. And the more I've been talking to people about what a home means to them, whilst also talking about the business aspect, you're integral part of both of those aspects. And so getting you on was the natural fit.
Thank you. I'm slightly nervous, and it didn't help that, I started thinking about it on the plane yesterday, and then the self-doubt comes to go, why has he invited me? Like, what have I got to offer? So, so thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm so excited. You've got your notes, you've got your props, but you won't need them anyway.
No, I won't.
So we'll go straight into what a home means, because that's where I love starting the conversation off, and whether that home being your childhood memories of growing up in Darwin, whether that be your family home that I grew up in Darwin, all aligned with Darwin. Talk to me, what does home mean to you?
It's hard because it's not a physical thing. Home's more, I suppose, emotional for me. So what does a home represent? And I think a home for me is somewhere where I feel safe. So Darwin's always been, well, that's where I was born, so that's my hometown. Having said that, whenever we drove to Alice Springs, where half my family was born, just coming through the red dirt of Alice Springs and coming over the hill, that feeling was always, I just felt like I was home. And so I suppose it's just more capturing that. A home is where my family is, and Quarry Crescent, where I grew up, even though that was our house and our first house, it probably was more bricks and mortar more than anything else. And it got destroyed in Cyclone Tracy, and it probably taught me that cyclones can break down bricks and mortar. So what is a home?
Going on Cyclone Tracy, you were there, you were a kid, it all happened, and then you and your 5 siblings were shipped off on a plane, and what was that like?
Look, it is really hard because we've just had the 50th anniversary of it, and people older than me, so I was 7. I just turned 8. It was my birthday on the 23rd, and then Cyclone Tracy came to Darwin. I'm one of 6, and we were born in 7 years, so we're literally less than a year apart. Mum had the only working stove in Stewart Park, so in a suburb, and because she had invested in a gas stove. So she got a visit from the army to say it was a huge ask, but would she remain with Dad to help feed the people that were coming back to rebuild. So, and I'm going to become emotional now, but anyway, so my last, the last memory was all of us were on the bus, and I looked out the window and Mum and Dad were there waving their 6 kids off. and not knowing where we were going to. We were meant to end up in Alice Springs. However, we went to Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide to finally get to Alice Springs, and that's where we stayed for 2 years while Darwin got rebuilt.
Maybe that's where the connection to home and the red dirt and the...
Maybe it was. It was, we're in boarding school. Even though we had family in Alice Springs, no one could house 6 kids. And, yeah, it was good to get back to Darwin, but it took them 18 months to rebuild. Yeah. Gosh, I've forgotten all about that. So thanks, Michael.
You're welcome. It's I think that's the best part about these conversations is that you turn your phone off and it's just two people connecting over whatever the stories are. And I think talking about a home, everyone's got something emotional about a home, and so it's quite easy to talk about that. And you get a bit more comfortable as well in front of the camera.
Absolutely. All the 3 cameras, 4 cameras.
And then if we're moving on from childhood, I don't know many people that have a harder work ethic than you.
Well, that comes from my father. Dad's 92, and he was in food wholesale. And so he was the only truck driver for his business, and 2 days a week he drove all the way to Adelaide to get fresh produce and drive back. And so, that's hard to imagine, and that's what got him into, the Hall of Fame in Alice Springs for the trucking industry. And so when you see your father, and he wasn't there for any of the 6 births, when you see your father have that kind of work ethic, and as you know, for delivery trucks, they arrive at 2 or 3 in the morning. So watching that, it does instill something to you, and seeing what he produced from that. We went to live overseas as a family for a year, and, that was back in 1977. So, what that cost. So I think that's where I've got it from. And it's more the actions. If you just focus on the actions, then you look up and, you get the result.
Did you have an entrepreneurial type childhood where you were mowing lawns or selling lemonade or whatever it might have been? Was there any of those activities that you were doing then, or you always knew that if you worked hard, you were going to get progress?
No, we didn't have that. We had a fairly carefree life in Darwin, and so the memories of my childhood were more to do with that carefreeness, getting on our bikes and disappearing for the day, sitting at the top of the hill, when it was raining, and sitting in the gutters and things floating down in the gutters. We certainly, the cash for cans, that was around when we were young, and so getting on our bikes and going and collecting cans and getting money for that. So no, it never, it was more to do with you just simply worked hard at whatever you were doing and something happened. So no entrepreneurial skills.
Well, I guess it kind of takes us to where you are now. You've been running a successful real estate company in Darwin for more than a decade, and maybe you found yourself running a company because you just worked hard rather than wanting to start a company.
Yeah, starting a company was forced upon me. So I did go to real estate after working in Dad's business. And I went to real estate because a good friend of ours gave us a book, Don't Sign Anything by Neil Gaiman. And it exposed an industry that I had never thought of. And I suppose an industry where if someone had said, you're going to be a real estate agent, there was no way I was going to be a person that wore a suit and wore an ego and was flashy because that didn't resonate with me. So I read the book and I then proceeded down to say, gosh, you can actually have a career that is truthful and gives you values. And so I didn't go into it for the money. I went into it to go, this is a great path. Of course, we belong to, which is now Smart RE. So we joined a training organisation, which is Australia's best training organisation. So I think from that came education and knowledge, and knowledge is powerful. So from that came, I was always a reader, but I developed an encyclopedia of knowledge where if I needed anything, I just needed to look up into my bookcases, and my bookcases are fairly well known in the industry, where any answer can be found in a book. So that's where it led to.
I think the amazing part about reading is that sometimes you read a book at just the right time. And so when you've got all of those answers on the shelf, you don't necessarily know the answers there until you need it at that point in time.
It also helps, whether it's on philosophy or, there's nothing new in these books. If you read Picasso and things like that, ethics was back then. So, it's really good. But there was certain books, and I have a pile of books, and they're my 20 books that have changed my life. And so it takes a lot to get onto that pile, and I've got a photo. And so it really helps me remember that without those books, I wouldn't be where I was today. And probably the most influential one was Affluenza by Clive Hamilton, who's an Australian professor, I think at Canberra University now, or UC.
Yeah, University of Canberra, yeah.
And it talked about home, and it talked about, when a TV breaks down, do you go to the shop and get a lower model that's cheaper? Do you get the same model, or do you go for a bigger model? And normally we upsize, and that comes with a cost. But he also talked about homes. And, we used to be very comfortable living in 90 square metres. And all of a sudden now we want something that's 300 square metres. But it's changed the way that we as Australians now live, because you don't have to argue over a remote anymore, because every room has a TV and a remote. And so people have created environments in kids' bedrooms where they don't actually have to communicate and negotiate. And so, going back to having one TV where you do have to argue or negotiate, that's been lost. So that would probably be the top of the pile.
I guess it's easy when you're in a household with no kids, when you're trying to watch TV, because there's no real argument.
No.
You've got your husband and you, and whatever you want to watch, you watch, and he might get to watch something after that.
Yeah, indeed. But I do have a look when I get, I'm a bit of a voyeur, and so the excitement still after 20 years, the excitement of getting the phone call for someone to say, can you come and have a look at my home? I cannot wait, because you get invited into people's lives. And if more politicians did what we did, they would probably be able to work on real issues, because you're sitting around a kitchen table talking about people. You're also surrounded by their things. And so that tells you a lot about those people. And more houses I'm going into actually don't have TVs.
Really?
And books, which is lovely to see.
do you think that's the type of people you're helping, or it's just a gravitational shift?
No, I think it's the type of people. I think, our values attract a certain... I won't be an agent that has all the business ever. And there's certain people where I'm honest with them. I can't help them because our values aren't in alignment. So I'll certainly keep them safe. I think it's more an attraction.
You've had what would be considered a really successful career in real estate, with plenty of highs and no doubt a few lows. What are some of those highs and lows that you've had in the industry? Because you looked up to by, especially as you mentioned, Smart RE, which was Pittard. People within that training system look up to you as one of the leaders within the group. And why do you think that is?
Look, it's hard to quantify because highs and lows certainly give good stories. I think you're looked up to because of the consistency, and you're still there after 20 years. So the wisdom of those 20 years, people do want to hear. We believe in DISC profiling, which is behavioural profiling, and so certainly understanding how my profile, which is high D, high C, fits within that as well. So highs and lows. I think the biggest, or opening your own office was certainly a high, but it was that I took the actions and then all of a sudden I looked up and we were opening the office. It wasn't a conscious decision to do, because one of the lows was the business that I joined originally, over 20 years ago, went into voluntary administration, and it was hard for me to fathom how a real estate office could be in that position. And so that taught me you either had to be a really good leader or a really good salesperson. So unfortunately, I'm a very good salesperson and not so much a good leader. And so it's lonely at the top, and sometimes you feel like you're the angel sitting on the top of the Christmas tree, yeah? So you look down and you're up there by yourself. So it does get lonely at the top. You mentioned Smart RE, and the friends that we've developed through that probably are my saving grace and my mentors. They would be the two, the high and the low, and it all started with real estate.
And real estate's changed over that 20-year period, but I imagine some things have remained the same. And the way you interact with buyers and sellers and list properties, I imagine a lot of that would still be quite a similar skill, would it not? Like, there's obviously social media, there's obviously changes in obviously the internet was around 20 years ago, but there's realestate.com probably wasn't, and maybe newspaper ads and whatnot. So there's definitely been some massive changes, but I imagine a lot of it would have remained the same in terms of how the buying and selling actually takes place.
Yeah, you need a buyer and you need a seller. Our industry is built on births, deaths, marriages and divorces. So, when people ring up and say, when's the good time to sell, or when's a good time to buy, spring, dry season in Darwin. And it's reminding people that what doesn't change is births, deaths, marriages and divorces, and what causes someone to buy a home and what causes them to also sell a home. So that doesn't change. They're still building homes, so we haven't yet developed a holistic approach where we're living in the ether yet. So, put a sign on a property, and that's all you need to do. Internet marketing has certainly changed. So when I first started, you're right, there was just the newspaper. And so if someone wanted to buy a home, they had to go and drive around the suburb and look for the for sale sign.
Very, very different. It's a tough industry. And you've obviously seen people come and go because the money can be there if you work hard and you have some success in the industry. So you must see a lot of change from the people that enter the industry and also the people that exit. Are there many people that are still in Darwin real estate that were there when you started 20 years ago?
Oh, yeah, we call them the old dogs, or certainly I do. And that's not a derogatory. That is, they were taught like I was. And they're still there. And, it'd be a handful that are still there. It is a revolving door, and it always will be, simply because it's a low entry. So we used to always say, it's easier to get into real estate than opening a packet of cornflakes and finding a toy inside. But it's high cost to the seller and certainly the buyer because they're paying, on average, $20,000 for what you would hope was skill. But we don't have to, certainly in the Northern Territory, we don't have to retrain. We don't have to re-look at our qualifications. And so that's why, certainly books or Smart RE for us is our backbone to keep us skilled as well.
20 grand to sell a home, some would consider quite a high cost. Do you think it's when people engage real estate agent, people can sell their property themselves?
Oh, absolutely.
And so some people will go, well, is it worth paying an agent, let's call it 20 grand, or do I do it myself? You've obviously helped people on with that, like on both sides and with that aspect. What's something that you see from people that sell privately in terms of if they were to go down that path?
When I go to what we call a listing presentation, I go in to interview the sellers. They think it's the other way around, but certainly I've got to find out if these people are going to listen to good advice. And you generally will find out within about 15 minutes because we don't do the tour. I don't walk around to look at the home. I just want to sit at their dining room table. Keeping people safe is important. I think we have got a booklet for anyone who would like a booklet, and that's produced from Smart RE, which is called the 10 Property Pitfalls, and I think that tells you the mistakes that people make. But I think the 3 biggest mistakes, if you are a seller, is that you don't get the 3 guarantees, and one is price. And so agents are known for providing a high price and a low commission to get the signature, and that will never change because you want someone's business. And I think you mentioned it on a recent podcast, do you want to be the person who wants the business or do you want to be the person who needs the business? And being able to price a property correctly is a skill. Payment, so the upfront payment is a scam because I don't know too many people. It costs on average $3,000 up front. The one that I spoke to the other day, they've already paid $6,000 up front.
You're talking about upfront marketing costs to list a property.
To list a property. Now, I don't know too many people that would go into Bunnings with $3,000, give it to the cashier and then walk out without anything. But that's exactly what Australians do on a daily basis. So my philosophy, and certainly the philosophy of our training, is that there is no upfront cost. The cost gets paid when you've actually done the job, like every other industry. And the other one is the period of time. So I believe that an agreement between an agent and a seller should only be for 4 weeks. because it's like a new employee. You know, the person looks fantastic at interview, but it's not until after 3 months that you truly know what they're like. And those three things are the basis of what the agreement should be. So it should state a price, it should state no payment, and it should state only 4 weeks. And if all sellers did that, then they would keep themselves safe in our industry.
It's funny. It's been a while since I worked with you, worked for you, worked with you, going on 9 years ago. And so many of the things are still the same. It's funny because I repeat a lot of it to people I'm helping now. Births, deaths, marriages, divorce, all those sort of things. Where I wanted to go now with you is around the property market, and everyone's looking for a quick buck, and it's also the rise of social media has also seen the rise of people providing advice without having any substance to it, and we're certainly seeing that, especially around property. And Darwin is this fascinating beast. And I see a lot of material now that is saying Darwin is the next property market to boom in Australia, which I'm looking going, wow, that's interesting.
It is.
Without even looking into any more detail. But I know, having door knocked every street in Darwin for a couple of years and living and growing up there, that Darwin's a very difficult market to purchase a property as an investment if you don't know the market well. What are you seeing on the ground from a property market movement perspective, and where do you think the market will be moving to in the next 12 months to 2 years?
It is an interesting question. And Noel Whittaker wrote a book, 25 Years of Wisdom. And it's the most interesting book because you can flick back to a page and read, and it sounds like you're talking about today. And then you look and it's 1973. So I think the same thing, you know, for Darwin. You know, the two things that will never change with Darwin is our distance from the rest of Australia and the climate. So until you solve those two things, Darwin's always going to be a transient population. You know, we're a base of 120,000 people. So that's a shallow market. It will always be a shallow market. So, you know, they talk about it being a hotspot, and you're right. We haven't seen investors in Darwin on flood for years. 2012,
probably?
Okay, the Impex boom of 2012 started in 2012 and finished in 2018. So Impex was the gas plant. And certainly that was a ridiculous market, which had no depth as well, because once the plant was finished, it went from 8,000 people to a maintenance crew of 300. October last year, first home buyers got a $10,000 grant to assist with stamp duty, so that was certainly something that stimulated the market. But the onslaught of buyers' agents is, you know, we didn't have buyers' agents in Darwin. All of a sudden, you talk about phone calls, we would get 2 emails a day, every day, from buyers' agents.
Where are they based generally?
Generally in Melbourne, Melbourne, Sydney. I've never been exposed to an industry that has less training than the real estate industry. And, you know, when I talk to these buyers' agents, they're just trying to snap up a property with no basis for their client. And so my biggest concern, and you raised it, I think it was last podcast, for buyers' agents, what happens to that investment when it goes wrong? And the things that can go wrong in Darwin is certainly the structural components of our homes because of cyclones. But it's also the yields. We've always had strong yields, but can they be maintained? And so that's my biggest concern, is that we're seeing properties sell that don't have the basis behind them being a sound investment. And, you know, I've got properties that are part of a strata. These buyers agents don't like strata properties. And you're going, but this is the investment. And based on, you know, this property that we're selling for $350,000, that's getting a yield of, you know, or $500 a week, and it will never go away, but they won't look at it, and so it's been puzzling. Where to? It's a steady market, and it's a comfortable market. However, it's slow. Yeah, and so we've seen a decline of, I would say, between 7 to 10% on prices, and that's because agents are now selling off market to these buyers' agents. But we're analysing the figures, and you're right, they're making one phone call and saying, we've just listed this property, but the properties are selling on average for $50,000 less than what they should if they went to market. Yeah, so that's the concern.
Yeah, I've voiced that concern as well, and I've voiced it a number of times with other guests, and obviously in the industry, that similar to the broking industry, that the barriers to entry are so low, and now we've got 23 or 24,000 mortgage brokers, and the issue that I've got with mortgage brokers, and that many of them, is that the skill level isn't there, and you provide poor advice as a broker, and it can be detrimental, probably maybe paying a higher interest rate or more mortgage insurance or something like that. So the costs are probably a few $1,000s. My issue with buyer's agents, the non-skilled ones, because I do believe in buyer's agents, just skilled ones, the non-skilled ones, is that you provide advice on a poor asset, being an investment property, your ability to liquidate that and sell, and the ramifications could last decades. And so anyone that's listening that's thinking about investing, I would strongly urge you to do it. Talk to the broker, but finding the right buyer's agent is going to be the most important part of this process now, because there's so many out there.
There is so many out there, and so and we won't go into a royal commission on, you know, buyers agents. However, something does need to be done, because they're giving financial advice and gaining money from that, and that's got to be questionable. Yeah, so, you know, we have a code of conduct as agents. However, we still need to go through some kind of evolution similar to what financial planning did. And, yeah, I'd say watch this space. However, investors as a core group of people aren't one class of people. And so they're just a solo voice. And so there won't be a class action against people. So, yeah, it is my worry that it will have a flow-on effect in a few years for Darwin.
Yeah, and I think the exciting thing of using a buyer's agent is it doesn't necessarily mean you're buying in your own backyard, which we were originally doing a lot of the time, was living in a suburb and then buying an investment in the same suburb. So the fact that buyer's agents open this market to the whole of Australia is really appealing. So, yeah, anyone out there that's listening, that's thinking about investing, choosing the right buyer's agent is so crucial.
Yeah, it is crucial. And there's got to be some depth to it. However, certainly sending an email to me, I could certainly give you a few tips on what websites to look at, and certainly, you know, Noel Whittaker. You know, I look at what people are reading to see if they're also educating themselves, because I think still the best investment, it is in books. And so if you are looking at investing, it is hard. But there's, Margaret Lomas, who believes in positive gearing, and Noel Whittaker, certainly Scott Pape. So they would be probably three. Terry Ryder from Hotspotting. Louis Christopher from SQM. But if you're not subscribing to Hotspotting, then you're not a serious investor. I don't know what the statistics are, and I probably should have looked up before coming, but it's something like, and someone's going to say, no, Kate, it's not that, because the numbers aren't quite, 2 plus 2 on the calculator. But it's something like 0.000001% of Australians have more than one property as an investment. It's because they don't structure it correctly. And that's where, certainly you, who we refer business to you, but we refer it on the depth of that people need to structure their investments correctly from the very beginning. So when that many Australians will only ever own one, the flow-on effect, if they bought the wrong one or paid the wrong price, again, a concern.
It is a concern. Changing paths. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I think I really should. We have worked with each other, obviously professionally, but also now being on the other side of the fence. And there's something around mortgage brokers in Darwin particularly that seem to be not as skilled as what you'd probably hope. And I've certainly had helped a few people that you've been selling the properties to, so helped a few buyers because their broker hasn't been able to provide the finance for whatever reason. We just had a finance approval yesterday.
We did.
For a first home buyer, and the reason that I ended up helping her was because the original broker put the wrong postcode into a submission and got an automatic decline.
Bad data in, bad data out.
The ramifications, and explaining to Jess that it wasn't her, it was an issue from the person that was helping, the relief in her voice, and I don't think people appreciate how much a decline or a rejection from a bank can really affect you. And talking to anyone that has gone through that process and them realising that it was actually the bank's policy or something that wasn't input correctly and it wasn't them themselves is so powerful. Jess got the approval yesterday. Listening to her voice, and it's why I love doing what I do, but also being able to do it on the other side of your transaction is really special. It's really cool. I don't know whether you've spoken with her, but anyone that is listening and they've gone through the process of getting finance and it hasn't gone the way they thought, just remember that it's not you, and that's why the rise of brokers has been the case, because you go into one bank, they might say no, but it's because there's so many other options. Talking about the buyers that you're helping and the lasting effect that buying a property can have on them, especially first home buyers.
Oh, look, especially first home buyers. And they're a group of people who, in the Northern Territory, up until October, they paid full tote odds stamp duty on homes. And so it was a penalty because no one was prepared to see that if you don't have them constantly filling up our funnel, then you will stall the property market. And maybe that's why they did it. However, helping first home buyers to be able to put a nail in a wall is just something so special, because it's the actions they've taken to get there. So it's the savings that they've taken, But I think the most important thing was people like Jess, and she would say that she listened to really good advice. And so that's the hardest part for first home buyers. We've coined it for first home buyers a hotel corridor. And so a corridor of a hotel, you're walking along, and behind every single door is someone's opinion. I've always said where there's a will, there's a relative. Yep. So when you're buying a home, everyone's got an opinion. So you open this, room, and then that's the person that says, halve the price and you're paying too much. You open this door. And I think that's the hardest part for first home buyers, is that there is no helpline. And so, having somewhere where a first home buyer can go to get that good advice. And I think, I know, because you're well trained, but even listening to you give that advice to them, that is probably the result of them getting a home or not.
Well, definitely in this case.
This case it was.
Definitely. And Jess will get the keys to her first home next week or the week after. The difference of that 2 or 3 week period is monumental in her life. And it's so cool to be a part of that.
It is. And we forget that. Every settlement for us isn't the money. It's really funny because we just know that you get the money. But giving that person the keys to their financial security, their decision to have confidence in Darwin's market, their decision to have confidence in being part of our economy, that's pretty amazing, because they're making Darwin home. And people don't see that. In the Northern Territory, where we have caveat emptor, so we have buyer beware laws, unlike the rest of Australia. And they've made a big decision to take confidence in the building as well.
Yeah, I love being part of it. Work ethic is huge for you, and it's worn off on me so greatly. And I've had such a wonderful upbringing because I've got you there as this hard-working, determined person in terms of the DISC profile, that determined person that just works so hard but is so incredibly generous and empathetic. And I've got Dad as this caring, soulful kind of person that's fun-loving and all that sort of stuff. And the best part about it, I think, trying to think of it now being a parent, is that the traditional roles in our household were different.
They were.
And I still haven't come across many people that they've had that same upbringing where you were working really, really hard. I'm not saying Dad wasn't, but you were working really hard and long hours and those sort of things. And Dad was always there as that kind of traditional mum role. And I think it's one thing that I reflect on quite a lot about how fortunate I am that was the case. And it's kind of bringing both of those worlds together. There wasn't a question there, but I'm really lucky with that. And I've got both of you to thank. Was that always where you thought life would be, in terms of you being the sole, not sole breadwinner, but the breadwinner, and putting people on your back and just taking them with you, rather than the traditional, I'm going to cook meals and clean the house?
Yeah, it probably says a lot more about your dad, who's a high C, because not many men could do it more than women. So, it says a lot about his strength of character to be able to pull off that role in a female-dominated industry and be comfortable. But as we all know, he's the person that you want to have there. And all of us know that, and we know that he also provides that to so many other people. So my job was made easier because he wanted that role. He wanted to make sure we were all going to be successful. So it is unusual. Do I look around at people and pass judgment? No, the fact was that, it was hard having the role reversal, but that was more to do with, certainly the industry we chose, in that that was a very male-dominated industry as well. But there was no conscious decision. It was just our disc profiles obviously matched.
Yeah. It's amazing how that it still works, the disc profiling.
Yeah.
I've loved today. I knew that I would. I think you don't give yourself enough credit for how knowledgeable you are as a person, as a real estate agent, as a business owner, as a mum. And for that, I'm grateful that you came in today, because I know that it's not really within your wheelhouse of wanting to do that. So thank you. Finishing off and bookending the podcast, I like talking about what people are proud of. And as you know, listening to the way that Mima and I talk to our elders around being proud of themselves, same thing that you instilled on me. So it's quite funny how that kind of apple doesn't fall far from the tree. What are you proud of from being a business owner, real estate agent, a mum, a daughter, a sister, all those sort of things? What comes to mind?
I suppose, I'm proud of our children, and certainly the home life that it's provided, because that's generational change. That is a legacy that you can actually, you talk about the dash, and the dash is, from 1966 when I was born to whatever, day I'm no longer. And it's that dash in the middle that you've got to be proud of. You've got to be proud to live today. You don't wait for retirement. So I think living today, putting your life into thirds maybe, a third work, a third family, a third friends, and just understanding how that fits, and having those kind of barriers. So when you talk about being proud, I think it is having that reflection constantly, and following good advice.
You're probably the number one listener of this podcast, which is amazing, and I'd expect that as well. Yeah. Will you listen to this one?
No, I will listen to it, because I am also your biggest critic. So I don't get paid to listen to your podcasts, as you know. 15 years ago, I stopped listening to the radio in my car, and all I do is listen to audio books or podcasts. And I find every time I listen to your podcast, I get something from it. And as a note taker, it's amazing whether it's something from, anyway, I find it really interesting, and it's not to do with real estate, even though it is. You choose your guests so well that I couldn't do it better.
Is that a self-compliment?
Yeah, and then I go, so you asked, would I listen to my own? No, I will listen to it, but I will also critique it and go, oh, okay, next time if you ever get asked again, and maybe I won't, and maybe this is my cameo and my last podcast.
Crescendo.
Yeah. I'll listen to it, to critique it, to learn from it, because you never, ever graduate from sales school. And so you're always learning. And so, yes, I will have some takeaways from it.
I can't wait for it to be released, and I can't wait to sit there with our two girls and let them watch it, because they love it on the screen and go, Dad's on TV, and now it'll be Dad's on TV with Grandma.
Yeah.
So I'm super thrilled. Thank you. I've loved it. Hopefully everyone else does, and hopefully you can enjoy listening to it as well.
Thank you, Michael.
Cheers. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of our community at That Backyard Property Podcast. We would love it if you could like, comment, or even share with a family member or a friend that might get something useful from today's episode. We can't wait to see you again next Tuesday.